Good afternoon, and thank you so much for clicking on my video. Today we are going to be talking about some technical analysis for the SPY Qs, Apple, Tesla, Amazon, Nvidia, Meta, Microsoft, AMC, and GME, and we're going to go into volatility and things like that, and something that I think we should be aware of right off as we get into this video. Let's just tackle it at the beginning before we get into that analysis. Hey, let's look at what's coming down the pipe. Now, and the reason I am bringing up data is to show you there is not a lot of data going on. We have seen the daily curl up, and we are leaning towards that squeeze with the base that we have created in the SPY. Tomorrow, we will be getting at 6 a.m. the 30-year mortgage rate in here. But something that I think is interesting and what you need to have your radar, if you do use this platform, select countries and put Japan on there, because I think it is important to look at the Japanese info that is coming out as far as Thursday goes. Thursday night, when the market is closed for us, the inflation rate year over year will be coming out. They'll get their core inflation rate, and then we will also get the BOJ interest rate decision. I think that you might want to be paying attention to this. I have started to research into this, and I will tell you this. If there's something that I feel like I'm not versed enough in as of this moment, I have researched this for a lot of time today, but I am not willing to speak on it. Maybe we can talk about it during the live show tomorrow, but I don't want to do you a disservice. I am not an expert in everything, and anyone who tells you they're an expert in everything, probably a liar. So I just want to make sure to give you guys the best information possible. We noticed that the SPY is curling up on the daily chart, right? We saw the curl up, and I said I never short anything that is curled up on a daily chart, and that is what we seem to be doing here. And we're actually closing at the high of the day with some very squeeze-like behavior. Now, I'm going to say squeeze-like behavior because you're just seeing very, and actually I should pop it up for you. You're seeing on the daily chart some very light volume come in on this type of move, which I expect tomorrow, maybe if we end up in the upward direction as we are closing at the high, very likely we could go test in this bundle in here, which would get us to the weekly and daily expected move, which happens to be at 606.92 for the daily expected move tomorrow for the SPY, 599.18 for the downside move for tomorrow. So these have spread out a little bit. Pay attention when we get over to the Qs. But something I wanted to point out here, as I just turned volume off because it takes some space there, the 30-minute, I wanted to pay attention to this. Now, something you'll notice a lot about squeezes is you will see a lot of things that have divergence, right? Now, divergence will pop up all the time in a short squeeze because the momentum in this, especially when you pull up the volume, you're like, the momentum in this is weak, but it can continue in that upward direction because people have those short positions that we showed you guys how there's like a 6.0 put to call ratio going into February. So just pay attention as this is pointing in the upward direction. Hey, if this wants to continue squeezing, we might just continue in that direction. Now you do have divergence that has confirmed, but look at the bars, right? This is why the price action is some of the most important stuff. We are not seeing a closing bar at all today below this 9 on the 30-minute, which is a pretty big hint. So what we're going to talk about is the fact that, yeah, okay, we're pointing directly towards that upside move. And we do get some interesting things from Japan, is all I'll say, in the next 48 hours or so. So we're paying attention to that. But can we go higher? Yes, you can. You're pointing in that upper direction. How would we go lower, though, right? We want to talk about the bear side. If things do start to pull down, what do we want to pay attention to? Well, the fact that you do have some form of divergence. If you actually go over, and you can look at this and see if this is violated at this point, but if you go over to the SPX 500, the futures here, you'll actually notice that we are holding the divergences on the futures, and I would really be paying attention to that. That does overall say that this is still weak in some way, even though it doesn't necessarily show the same thing for the SPY on the 30-minute. So what I want to do is just show, hey, the 2-hour, what is the important level to really pay attention to if we start to fall? Well, first thing is going to be the daily expected move, 599.18, right? We already told you, hey, if you get above 600, you can really hold up there. The chances of squeezing are pretty high, right? This is your call wall, and you are taking that, gapping above it, retesting it, going above it again, and it looks really nice. Now, if you start to lose this, where would you pay attention? Well, we'd be paying attention to that 5-day moving average coming up for a retest down in these areas. But I also want to bring your attention down to 590. Right around 590 is where I'd be paying attention, because that is where we actually have a major put wall. And if you notice, we reacted to a great level, and I was really thinking, hey, we might want to go make that right shoulder in some way. But this overall is such a positive move that even if that curled down, you would be leaning more towards a pullback. Now, we'll see what happens with the reaction from Japan, because thank you guys for bringing that to my information, or that to my attention during the live show, because I was able to do a lot of research back in August, early August into July 31st, the last time they had one of those decisions. And so we'll see what happens with this, but you do have 2 days before that event. as of tomorrow, I'd be paying attention to the fact that we are continuing to squeeze, which means we're going to maybe get rid of these signals if we head in the upward direction. But for the week, if we get up to these levels, hey, it would say we have a 68% chance to land below this purple line by the end of the week. Qs, we're starting to see that upward movement, and what are you seeing? You're seeing the divergence on the MACD. You're not seeing it at all on the RSI. Now you can go look at futures and see if it's over there, just to see if this move is over all week, and if it continues to be weak and holds those divergences, yeah, you might have something to pay attention to there. So we should pay attention to this possibly continuing as we're kind of breaking through the trend between the two recent highs right here and right here. And we're starting to move in that upward direction. As of right now, we are holding well above the 5. So a pullback would be very, very nice, but I assume any kind of pullback that turns back up would be a great opportunity at this point to possibly see a move into new all-time highs. Now, we'll be paying attention to what happens throughout the week with the yen and all that stuff. But for the most part, we notice that the 2 hour is up, 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 up. And if that wanted to continue, hey, it's not curled down or anything like that. It's not even overbought at this point. So 531.11 to the upside is what I'd be paying attention to for the Qs. I'm going to double check those numbers. Yep, we're good. And the downside move you'd be paying attention to 518.49. Now, I want you to notice something about the Qs compared to the SPY. The Qs, weirdly enough, the SPY has about, I think, 12.5% implied volatility for tomorrow. The Qs have like 23%, which I found very interesting. Usually they're relatively close, but actually the Qs seeing almost, close to double what the SPY has for a daily expected move is very interesting to me. So I do think we need to be paying attention if some volatility comes into the Qs at some point. So I'm going to talk about the downside move that can come, right? A 30-minute pullback that turns up into positive territory. Okay, we can hold up here, we can hold up here. But if that 2 hour wants to drop, we could come all the way down and fill a gap, maybe even test the downside weekly expected move before we head in that upward direction. We want to take into consideration that this is just what we came out from. And are we at risk that we could see another one of those moves again? And that's where we're really just paying attention to risk. We noticed the structure down at the bottom. We took the good plays. We're taking profit on the way up. And now we're going, okay, we're getting to an area which is more bought than here. It's more bought than here. So if this curls down, I want to make sure to be reacting. But would this overall be very bearish at this point? No. This one was close to the center line on the MACD. This one was close to the center line on the MACD. This one's further away. So I'd really pay attention, even if it's drastic, to if that's able to curl up into positive territory again, okay, just because of the positioning of the MACD for the 2 hour chart for the Qs. Another thing about the Qs, just before we switch over to Apple, is they have confirmed an upward trend move for positive territory, right? We're in positive territory and we see a curl up, which means we do have a good shot to test this high, go make a new one. I'm just going to be aware of a 2 hour pullback that could come before we actually make that next big move higher, right? We can see this thing happen and then end up seeing a pullback that then shoots us past into a new all-time high. We'll be paying attention to that. Flipping over to Apple. Terrible, 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 right? But right here is very, very important. This 220 level, about 220, you're reacting down to lower levels. You're outside of a weekly expected move. This is very interesting to me, but the daily just struggling to turn up. What is Apple trying to tell us? And I would like you to put what you think down in the comments below, because Apple is one that I was paying attention to a long time ago in the past. Apple actually confirmed weekly signals in here before the market actually topped. Apple actually confirmed a lower high and bottom and went down while actually the market continued to go higher throughout this time and then fell. So is Apple overall telling us something bigger going on, or are people using the same exact excuse every time to sell Apple, which is something to do with China, right? China sales and all that stuff. Well, we'll be paying attention to it. So as of right now, you do not have any really good structure. The only thing I can maybe find here is potential divergences on the RSI, but I don't want to read into those too much. But if that 2 hour is able to curl up and go to positive territory, that's when we might see a daily curl up. At this point for Apple, you have to be very, very aware of lower highs. And that's the truth of it. So Apple going to be a little bit more complicated to trade. We will look back at this tomorrow morning during the live show, so make sure you're subscribed. Tesla on the daily chart not able to curl up just yet into positive territory, right? We need to see that full confirmation from the MACD and to test that high and go make a new one. So we'll be paying attention. The 2 hour chart as of right now, trying to curl down, holding below the 9 on the 2 hour. So that's pretty important. The key thing here is though, we're still at that 5-day moving average. So the 2-hour is suggesting that we could go lower. And what I'd be really paying attention to is if we actually start to break this and then break this. If we start to break this, it's really leaning towards, hey, we could go all the way down towards 357.78. So I'd be paying close attention to about 383 to 382. That's something very clear there for us at that point, but it's still positive. So anytime that wants to curl up, we'll be paying attention. The 30-minute as of right now looking like, hey, I have a divergence on the MACD, not on the RSI. What if we go do that right now? What if we go do that right now and we see a trap to the upside, actually? Because right now, all we're doing is we're seeing this get down by the center line, curl up at the 5-day moving average, this staggered blue line here. I think that would be fantastic, and we have weekly expected moves for you for Tesla. So I'd really be looking for this. I think this is how Tesla overall moves higher. You see a curl up on the 30-minute. You're already getting some inclinations that that is going to happen. And then you could test this high and go make a new one. Could be a nice little short-term trade setup there. So we'll be paying attention to it. But Tesla overall, just be aware of the risk if that makes an upward move and then ends up falling down. You would see some weakness in momentum, meaning that 2-hour might actually have to back off a little bit more than just these levels right here. Amazon, one of our favorite trades on the daily. Why it's our favorite trade is it just looked like the best flag. It had great signals at the lows here to give you all those 2-hour divergences. It looks fantastic. And look at this. You're reaping the rewards right now, right? You're getting the benefits as of right now for Amazon to make that upward move, going to test the highs as of right now. And that's fantastic. The 2-hour chart, as you look at that, if that curls down, hey, that could still be a setup for a higher low. So we'll be paying attention to that. And this is kind of when you want to pay attention, because the 30-minute getting a little excited here, I would say, going up towards a weekly expected move, actually going really, really close, if not tagging it. And so a pullback to retest a breakout area would be good. If that pullback needs to be a little bit deeper, as this 30-minute is really high up and you could see a 2-hour cross, we might even go all the way to the 5. And then worst case, I think we go all the way down to this gap down here. This gap down here, you're at risk of making a new low, so we would not like that from Amazon at this point. And the daily chart for Amazon has not crossed up yet, so you would say this could be an opportunity if Amazon's going to make a new all-time high soon. And I believe Nancy Pelosi actually just took a bunch of calls on Amazon. At least I think that was reported on the SEC filings. We can check on that in the morning. Let's just flip over to Nvidia real quick, because Nvidia doing something pretty good, which is getting another test of 141.12. We've really been stuck in this box for a while now. Now, the only thing I don't like is the buying pressure still. I really don't like the buying pressure at this point. I think you really wanted to see some kind of move and then create that series of higher lows very cleanly here for the 30-minute, because the 2-hour just looks like, even if it is looking okay, and even if the daily chart is trying to curl up as of right now, which it is, I believe, yeah, green down there. So what we want to pay attention to is the fact that the daily has curled up. So if the 2-hour wants to back off, it is positive, but I just don't like this structure overall as of now. I think it's inviting another drop for this to be some kind of A, B, C pattern to actually end up down towards 127.74 or a test of 125. So we'll be paying attention to Nvidia. I just don't think it is the most clear and easy setup out there. But if I could get a pullback and then see that actually confirm another move higher, that's when I would be a little bit happier with Nvidia from this standpoint. Microsoft, pretty good move so far, but we always talked about making a possible head and shoulders here for Microsoft. So on the 2-hour chart, you can see it pretty well, and I think you might have more work to be done here. But the 2-hour chart, if you're going to dip down to lower levels, you would be okay with that, right? You'd be okay if it even dropped all the way down to here, as long as that could curl back up into positive territory, because that would really set up some pretty good structure to take out the top of our zone. We would really like that. Obviously, after all that, or even if it wanted to happen on the 30 minutes, say tomorrow, we just curl up into positive territory and we see a break of the zone, I would just make sure that this is like a retest that then can turn up again. Just because at the highs here, you do have potential divergences on the 30-minute, and you can see that from Microsoft, which kind of invites the 2-hour to actually cross down through these levels. So we'll pay attention to what stocks are doing tomorrow, but for the most part, we do see some divergences, and we got to see if they're going to play out. We just want to be a little bit cautious trying to short, right? I'm not necessarily talking about shorting any of these downturns. What I'm going to more look for is if we see a drop that ends up holding up better, I can take a call into these as daily charts have started to curl up. AMC and GME, once again, AMC still waiting for a good signal here, whether that is some kind of 30-minute to confirm another low here to go a little bit higher, and then maybe we get a test of our weekly expected move or the breakdown area. So that's what I'd really watch for. But if we're going to go make a downward move again and end up down towards, I would say $3, maybe $2.92, if we're going to do that, we could actually set up a signal here where you end up doing this, you kind of taper off a little bit, you see a little divergence there on the MACD and maybe even the RSI at the same time. I think that would be great. As of right now, AMC, you know, the recipe for success is the 2 hours curled up in positive territory, the 30-minute is curled up into positive territory, and the daily is curled up into positive territory. And you don't have any of those. So you do have some time, it looks like here, to see what is going to happen. Are we taking back the 5 for a reason, or is it some kind of trap and we're just going to see that 2 hour curl down, or are we retesting the 5 right now and that 30 minutes going to try to make another move to the upside? So that's what I'd be watching for AMC. I would highly suggest, as I've been doing most of my day, looking into the yen carry trade, because it's actually pretty interesting when you start to think about AMC and GME. Now, GME, just so you're aware, look at all the divergences. We actually went and made another divergence point. You actually held it on the RSI and you held it on the MACD. So this looks like a 2 hour move is coming. And look at that, we were able to cross up the 2 hour there. So awesome. This is just the signal getting proven completely. Now this can still fail. Look for that 30-minute. If it crosses back down, that would be bad. If we can see a 2 hour actually get above the 5, we actually might go to 30.09. So we'll be paying attention to our topside move. And this is really where the fight begins. Just remember that, because a lot of the time we get here and people start going, oh my gosh, the squeeze is going to happen. And that's true. You need to break through this for some kind of squeeze to really take place on any stock, and it stays the exact same for GME. That's why we've seen, as we approach this, what normally happens, I would say 68% of the time. Well, we see the fight begin, and there's kind of a fight up in here, or you just see a move to it and it rejects. So this just tells you, hey, the 2 hour can see some kind of move here with those 30-minute signals, and the 2 hour is really deep into negative territory. So in order for this to go up over time, you most likely will need to make a higher low. You most likely will need to make some kind of divergence for this to really look good and look like a strong base for GameStop. So that's what I'd be paying attention to for it. We're waiting for good signals here. The recipe for success, the 2 hour is turned up, just in negative territory for your MACD. The daily is by the center line, so this is something I'd be paying attention to if the daily can confirm up. And implied volatility is pretty damn low for GME, at least as of when I calculated the ranges. So that would mean that option premium is probably pretty cheap there, just so you're aware. The 30-minute as well is curled up, but still in negative territory. So you can see the recipe for success. GME doesn't really have it yet, so you want to just make sure that these things are proving so you can see it a little bit better maybe in the near future. Maybe with a little bit more price action, we can look a little better in the next 24 hours. Volatility ended up just curling right back down, right? We were paying attention to possible divergences here for volatility. It curls down, which is what a squeeze tends to do. You'll see divergences on volatility on the 30-minute that just keep confirming down. And every time it confirms down, you just want to go, okay, this is still going to be squeezing to the upside. Now, we will notice that if you pull it back to like an hourly chart, which a lot of people do like, you will start to see those divergences popping up, but almost getting violated. So this is still leaning towards, hey, the daily chart has crossed down. We've crossed through these levels. We are possibly going to see this end up being some kind of ABC move, which is just 1, 2, and we're going to end up down towards 12.12. I'm still more leaning towards paying attention towards 12.12, but these days I am looking for a possible 2 hour divergence, right, at my 15.04 level, right? That's what I said this would most likely gravitate to. And then I want to see if I get a little reaction there that causes a dip in the market, and then it's able to fail, because that would lean towards, hey, yeah, we're getting a dip in the market, but if that rolls back down, the squeezing might just continue, and they were trying to get people bearish for that little pullback. And it doesn't even have to be that big of a pullback for the SPY. One thing I wanted to point out for the dollar was the small little flat divergence on the 2 hour, meaning some kind of upward move could be taking place soon. So I want to pay attention to that. And let's not forget, we still have to have our wits about us for this, because the monthly chart has confirmed up back in December. And that's why overall we could see some bad things going into 2025, right? We're in 2025 now. We've seen a rip around kind of market. We seem to have picked that direction. I'm glad we were able to follow the signals correctly correctly for some trades already in 2025. That's awesome. But we have to be aware that this is curled up. And as long as this is curled up, we should be aware of the risk that a big drop can come. So this is something I'd be paying attention to as far as the dollar goes. Now, our 10-year yield is very interesting. Now, if the only thing I was reading into with the 10-year yield here, according to the yen carry trade, if they do end up raising rates, was we do have divergence suggesting that the 10-year yield could drop down. Okay, now the reason that you kind of want that to drop down at this point is because if enough money has been borrowed from Japan and they start to have more borrowing costs over there, because most of the money that they are borrowing is on a variable rate, not a fixed rate, then we would want to be paying attention to the 10-year yield and what the Fed is actually going to decide to do on January 31st. Because on January 31st, if we have Japan raising rates and the US raising rates at the same time, that is a very bad scenario. That's a very bad scenario, and I'd have to look a little bit more into what the actual reaction would be, but it would put a lot of pressures on equities across the entire world at this point. So that's something I'd pay attention to. But the other problem is if these yields actually do start to head in the downward direction, or the Fed decides to cut again, not necessarily fighting inflation anymore, and we have gotten some higher prints from inflation, and that's kind of the whole reason that this thing started to base out back in the day, was because we're starting to get those higher readings for certain inflation data, and that's what we'll pay attention to. So we will still be paying attention to inflation data to see how this is going to react. At this moment, I did want to point out the 2-hour chart. The 2-hour chart is suggesting that there is divergence here, and you could see a reaction in the upward direction, meaning that these yields might see some kind of relief bounce for a 4-hour move higher. If we look at the 4-hour, it's deep into negative territory. That could be short-lived to go retest. I would say something like 4.663. I think that would be a solid retest, and our 5 happens to be there. Breakdown area happens to be there, so that's why I'm paying attention to that level. The main takeaway from this video is we are looking like a short squeeze right now. You're seeing the divergences. You're really, really itching to maybe short, but I would highly encourage you to wait till those divergences are, if you have to. Like, I don't short squeezes, because that's what really fuels a short squeeze, is they convince you to do that, they convince you to do that, and then it just keeps curling up, keeps curling up, keeps curling up. So that's what I'd be paying attention to at this moment. If we keep heading in the upward direction, yeah, just watch out, because eventually this thing will retrace, but it's probably when you actually just go, hey, this thing can't fall down. So that's what I'd be watching there. We got to look if we're going to get some kind of pullback as well. So there really is a state of the market here where you're in some kind of squeeze at this moment for the SPY. But when that does pull back, we might want to be paying attention to that. Why would that pull back? Well, we might need to pay attention to some Japanese data soon. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. I hope you guys have all the luck in the world with your trades going on with the rest of the week. Stay risk averse, stay trading like water, and you'll be just fine. Thank you guys for watching. Talk to you guys tomorrow. See you at the live show. Peace out.